1. I went on a hike as a spiritual journey in Denver, Colorado. I was there to attend the PS 2023 conference. I decided to hike alone and wander around the Rocky Mountains. I took some mushrooms and planned on some weed later on. The hike was amazing, and I got so many beautiful pictures. I was hiking for hours before I started heading towards a pond that a sign pointed to. It was a lot more walking than I thought, and being under the influence with night approaching, I began to worry. I pressed on and found my desired location, and was rewarded with one of the most beautiful views I'd ever seen. It wasn't long after I arrived that I strangely heard my name being called. It was my brother and his girlfriend on top of the cliff. They somehow found me. They didn't even come with me to this location, although they did know I was there. We talked for a bit, and I felt reassured I was safe, so I decided to smoke the weed I had. I did a dance to honor the spirits that guided my journey. As I was leaving, I decided to take one last photo with my phone. I pointed it at my brother and his girlfriend on the cliff and took it. After I saw the picture, I zoomed in because I was curious what it would look like, and saw an eye-looking shape. I had a feeling that a being of overwhelming power was watching me, and when I looked up from my phone, I saw those eyes in the trees and the sky all around me. I started walking, and words filled my head. "Don't doubt the power," it kept repeating. My footsteps grew heavy, and I began feeling like my heart might give out. I stopped and sat on a rock not far from where I took the picture. I looked up and saw the moon between two evergreen trees. I asked the moon for protection and performed a makeshift ritual, as I believed it would help me. I asked for the moon to use me as her tool to aid myself and humanity. I actually felt the moon take control of my body, and I entered a trance, but I got too scared and broke out of it. It was wild. I met up with my brother after waiting on a different rock near the car, and I got déjà vu. But it was different. I saw an alternate reality of sorts where I died in that moment, but it was more like I remembered I died at that moment. My head hurt the rest of the night, and sometimes I still get pain. I've gone to the doctor about it, and they say I'm fine. What do you guys think of this? I have not had anything bad happen to me so far since then, and I feel in good standing with all the forces I interact with. Nothing really changed since then. I know it is easy to write this off as psychedelic illusion with a weird picture artifact, but I'm not sure I personally can do that. It all felt so purposeful. I have no doubt that if I had been sober, this might not have happened the way it did, but my purpose on this walk was to grow spiritually. I paid respects, I danced wildly, I asked for guidance, and at the very end I saw it. We know very little about psychedelics, and humans have been using them to communicate with otherworldly beings since the shamans, maybe even before them. I might be crazy, but I just wanted to share this with someone. 2. For those listening, we did not record the session because we honestly didn't expect much from it, and my girlfriend didn't have any space on her phone. When we revisit and try this method again, we will ask permission to record and will be better prepared. Me and my girlfriend just got back from a haunted road. We frequent every now and then. This road has been proven to have at least one murder occur, as well as one suicide, and usually every time we visit we get something to take home and shudder over. Before tonight, the biggest piece of evidence we've gotten is a cat ball being lit up after my girlfriend said "show yourself," followed by a bunch of noise surrounding us in a nearby trail, after a similar setup was created moments later. Anyways, today we didn't have plans, so I was like, hey, let's download a Spirit Box app and try the Estes method on our road. For context, we watch a lot of Sam and Colby, and it's always been something I've wanted to try out or debunk. So I found a free one on Google Play Store with a 4.0 rating, and it kind of doubles as one of those cameras that map an outline of humanoid figures, which, for the record, 100% works, but the tech is janky, so I wouldn't trust it. And then we had it out. The Estes method, for those of you unaware, is basically when someone hooks up a headset to a spirit box and blasts the volume and blindfolds themselves. Then another person asks questions, and the person listening to the spirit box blurts out whatever they can make out. I've seen a bunch of criticism of this method before, but this was our first time trying it, and boy were the results crazy. I didn't think we'd really get anything, but whatever is on the road seemed to happily talk to us. My girlfriend was first on the spirit box, and I was the one asking questions. Every question I asked was followed by an almost immediate response, and here's a little snippet of what I got. The spirit's responses being what my girlfriend blurted out. "Is there someone with us?" "Yes," literally seconds after she put in the earbuds and I asked the question. "Do you remember us?" "Yes." "Do you like it when we come to visit?" "Yes." "Are we friends?" "Not my favorite." This interaction is the one that made me believe the method, and also made me a little hurt, not gonna lie. The response happened almost immediately after, and it was a little too specific to be a coincidence in my book. After discussing with my girlfriend, we kind of came to the conclusion that it was in reference to her being the favorite between me and her, as she claims to draw the dead to her. Whether you believe that or not is up to you, but it adds up for tonight. I asked some other questions regarding how many spirits are with us, how did you die, etc. And we all were met with, "What?" or gibberish my girlfriend couldn't make out. I'm left in awkward silence when I run out of questions. The spirit repeats "hi" 5 times over the span of the awkward silence. And then I say, "Are the rumors about the school bus true? There is a rumor that a school bus was stopped on the train trails down the road and hit a bunch of children, but there's no documentation of it, so I just assume it never happened." "Stop," says the spirit. "Block," says the spirit. Several seconds later, because the word "stop" kinda spooked me, and I hadn't said anything up until this point. "Listen," says the spirit after I don't respond. Sounds from outside my car started occurring, which very well could have been wildlife because we were surrounded by woods. The timing was just odd. And this is around the time when we took a short break because my girlfriend felt the need to close the door. I told her the method was working and that it was really cool, and we continued. I then proceeded to ask some boring questions like, "Do you like the woods?" and "Did you enjoy the snow?" All of which we had the answer yes, so the spirit was still clearly there. After that, I tapped on the girlfriend's shoulders and told her in more depth what happened. We geeked out, and then it was my turn. I could not hear a damn thing over the static. Like, I obviously heard a little bit of my girlfriend shouting questions, but it was all muffled gibberish. What's even more interesting is, for the most part, the spirit box sounded like gibberish too. It was really hard to make out words other than a few yeses, a hi, and the word "me" a few times. But I did my best, and it felt like I wasn't being a good translator. Apparently I was, though, and my girlfriend got very similar results, which was odd because when I was deaf and blind, it honestly felt like I was shouting nonsense to the void. Since I am not her, I don't have an exact recollection of what was said, as I did with my turn, but according to her, one of the yeses did in fact confirm that she was the favorite. One of the me's was in response to "Who touched our cat ball?" and another one was in regards to "Are you the one who shows up in my pictures?" Yes, we have a photo of an apparition, but to me it seemed a lot like pareidolia. But maybe not. And another me was in regards to "Are we safe here?" So her experience was a little more gibberish than mine, but she also said she didn't have very many questions, and mostly sat in silence, and whenever I blurted something out, it was in fact in regards to a question. Believe my story or not, it was still really cool, and it's worth a shot if you find yourself hunting or whatever. Maybe we got something more active here because we frequent this place a lot, and it's grown to know us. Or maybe it is all just a big coincidence, but to me the responses we got warrant this being a permanent part of our future haunted adventures. But 10 out of 10 experience will be jotting down better questions to bring to the road, potentially even tomorrow night. We intend on asking the spirits if it's okay to record the session, as they seem to enjoy our presence, and we want to be respectful. Update. We went back last night. The app is definitely doing something right. This time we pulled up the road a little bit, to a field that is near the spot where the cat balls were set off, and we heard those strange noises on the trail. My girlfriend went first and asked some pretty normal questions and got some vague gibberish answers, as well as some concise answers. She tried asking it if we could record, and as she started to swap to her camera, it said no, and she respected it. Some notable things happened while she was talking, but it was all tame like the other night, and I'm sure she would be happy to elaborate. One interesting thing that was said was the spirit did in fact want to follow us home, so that's fun, I guess. But then I started asking questions, and the tone immediately changed. Unprompted, the second my girlfriend put on the earbuds, she blurted out, "Hurry up!" I asked if we should leave, and she said, "Fuck off." Unlike last time, I asked a million questions because the interactions were very hostile and fast, so I can't really list them all, but I'll do my best to describe what happened. I tried asking some standard questions like, "Can you touch the cat balls on the hood of the car?" and "Do you want to leave this area?" but I was met with some really odd answers. Like for the cat balls, it said, "Can't right now," and just silence. But then I asked it why I told my girlfriend God doesn't exist. She asked if God existed, it said no. She asked if Satan existed and got no answer. And immediately the hostility ramped up. I asked something along the lines of, "We both know God exists," and she said yeah, and I said, jokingly, I probably shouldn't have said this, "And we know the time of judgment is soon, and God sees everything." And I kid you not, my girlfriend then said, it said, but it sounded sarcastic. At one point, unprompted, my girlfriend blurted out, "You don't deserve her," and I asked if it was a bad person, and I didn't get a response. I asked if it lives in the fields or the wooded portion we visited the night prior, and it said back there. I asked why my girlfriend was a favorite, and it said because. She had a similar interaction that said back, because. At some point her AirPods died, so we switched to my wired earbuds, and it told me to hurry up again, and an exchange took place where it sounded like multiple people were interacting with each other, that went along the lines of, "Is she here?" I said, "She is here." And my girlfriend kept blurting out things like she and he, as if whoever was outside our car was counting us inside the car. I asked, "Were you the one who made the noises when we went out on the trail?" and it said yes. And I kept asking variations of "How did you do it?" and eventually my girlfriend said, "That's impossible." After some conclusion, we have come to the conclusion that it may have been a call and response. Like one spirit was joking and saying, "Yep, that was me all right," and another was nudging them saying, "Don't listen to him, that's impossible." What it actually meant, who knows. I asked, "What is it like in the state you were in?" referring to the afterlife, and it said burning. I asked if it needed prayers, and in sequence it said no, and while answering my "Are you sure?" questions, it said, "You look back." What this means I have no idea, because I tend to look behind me a lot when we're there. And then it said, "Leave now." After it said "Leave now," I took the cat balls off my hood, we gave a "Thank you, don't follow us home" speech, and booked it. So, not only am I 100% convinced of this method, I am 100% convinced whatever is on that road really doesn't like me, and I angered it to no end. The way it just dropped the kind facade when I started asking questions really creeped me out, but the more we visit the road, the more questions I get, and the more I feel like returning to get to the bottom of those questions. 3. Hello, I'm a bus driver in a small town in England, and I think I've just picked up a passenger's soul on my bus. This happened 2 nights ago. I worked with this bus company for 8.5 years. I have driven the same route for 3 years. Over this time I have gotten regulars that I get to know, as I see them multiple times a day, some young and some old, taking them to work or taking to the shops and bingo. I often jump out to help my older passengers on with shopping and whatnot. I have had a passenger that I have taken for the full 3 years I have done this route, Jane. Jane is an elderly lady who suffers from dementia. She was well-functioning for the last 2.5 years, sometimes a little confused, but I was always patient and helped her however she needed. I used to pick her up from the bus stop right outside her house, literally a 10-second walk from her door to the bus stop. Every day I'd take her from her house to the local shopping centre where she'd play bingo with friends. Either way, her dementia worsened the last 6 months. After an incident on my bus where she got very confused and distressed, I had to stop my bus and try to settle her down. Someone on the bus knew her son, who thankfully worked close by and came over to help. I told my manager, who understood and approved for my passengers to get off my bus and get the next just behind, so I could stay with Jane. Her son came and calmed her down, got her home and thanked me for the help. We spoke about Jane, and I explained how it became friendly the last few years I had been on the route. I explained she hadn't freaked out like this before. He said he knew, and she spoke fondly of me, and that her dementia had worsened, causing her to have bad spells. He took my number and said he would get in touch to arrange a gift for looking after Jane. I insisted it was okay, and I didn't want a gift, but he insisted. He took my number and his mother and left the bus. I never saw Jane again after that day, but I did see the son at the shops. He explained Jane had got worse and unfortunately wasn't safe to leave the house. I thanked him for letting me know and wished her the best, and asked to be kept up to date with her condition, as we had become friends of the years. This leads to last night. I had been covering the late-night shift all week when around 11:30 p.m. I was driving by Jane's house. The bus was completely empty. But as I approached the stop, I thought of Jane as I normally do. For some reason, however, I had an urge to stop at the bus stop outside her house, as if something was waiting to board. I could see there wasn't anyone waiting, but the urge was so strong I did. I opened the doors and waited for a second. A cold rush of air entered the bus, and I closed the doors and drove on. I could feel a presence on the bus, and about 5 minutes later, or 6 stops, I felt someone next to my cab on the bus, like someone was waiting to get off. I stopped again and opened the doors. I felt the presence leave again, and I continued on, a bit confused. I fully believe in the paranormal, so when I got a call this morning from Jane's son to tell me she passed away 2 nights ago in her home around 11 p.m., I broke down. I had forgotten about the strange feeling I had that night, with a presence on my bus until the funeral. I took the day off and attended the funeral for Jane, before going back to the son's house for the wake. The son's house was 30 seconds from the stop I had left the presence off at. I don't know if this is crazy, am I just being stupid, but I picked up a presence from right outside Jane's house 30 minutes after she passed, and dropped it off at her son's house. Could I have taken Jane's soul on a final trip to see her son before she passed on to whatever is beyond? I really want to believe I did, so I have comfort in the idea I drove her one last time to see her son one last time. Does anyone else have an experience like this? Thank you. 4. I am a student at Yale University. We have our main library, the Sterling Memorial Library, and within it there are 14 floors of old book archives and long, dim hallways. We call it the Stacks, and it has a reputation at school for being an unorthodox hookup spot, because of its vastness and overall eeriness. Yesterday I experienced something that even after 12 hours has kept me terrified shitless. I typically study in the Stacks, but yesterday was the first time I decided to work there at night. During the day the Stacks are dim, but the few windows at the end of each hallway allows for ample lighting. At night, the Stacks are understandably more dark, and it makes it harder to navigate through. When I'm at the Stacks, this is my routine. I enter the 5th floor by taking the stairs, and I always go down 3 bookshelves to the left and walk to the end of the hall, where a small desk and chair are seated. I do this because it is easy to get lost between the aisles of books, and so I can remember where the exit is. Everything is fine until somewhere around 11:30 p.m. I do my studying in blocks. Hour 1 for math, hour 2 for science, etc., so I remember exactly what happened at 11:30 when I was done. The first was that all the lights shut off for a minute. When this happened, it didn't strike me as weird, because the library closes at 12 a.m., and what I assumed was a librarian must have been closing earlier for that night. But as I made my way towards the exit, things got really fucking weird. I went to the middle of the hall and 3 bookshelves back to the right, but I couldn't find the exit. Weird, I thought. Maybe I must have miscalculated my footsteps. The stacks have exit signs posted on the top ceiling on any given floor, so I searched for them in guidance, but the thing was, there were no exit signs. And this was extremely weird, given those signs are usually neon red. I walk for a bit until I see an elevator. I enter in hopes that it will lead me back to floor 1, the lobby. But what happened next was probably the weirdest thing. I pressed floor 1 and heard the elevator rumble. I felt the elevator physically lever down, but when the doors opened, I was back on floor 5. Now, this was when I was completely scared shitless and started speed-walking around the floor, stomping as loud as I can to attract any couples or students still studying. I eventually found the main stairs and fled down for what felt like an infinite number of floors before I reached the lobby again. When I was there, I found an exiting student and asked if they also experienced the 1-minute power outage and lights shutting off. They responded with a no, and that it must have been a problem on my floor instead. That really screwed me over, and I left ASAP. Needless to say, I don't think I'll be heading back there again. What happened? Any ideas or thoughts? 5. So I would just like to start this by saying I have never had any other encounters like this prior or afterwards. I was around 7 years old, give or take, and I was at my grandma's house with my mother at the time. My grandma smoked, and the shop she got them from was probably a 5-minute walk there and back. One day I was there, my mother and grandma went to the shop to get some cigarettes, and I stayed at the bungalow owned by my grandma. This is where things got weird. I always felt kind of uneasy in this bungalow, but whatever, I was young and, to be honest, was quite unaware. I remember clear as day on this occasion. There I was, alone, and there was a man in a wheelchair with me, just in the front room. Now, when I think back, I can partially build his face in my head, but nothing was unusual or scary to me. Such a bizarre experience now I think back as an older, matured individual, is I think we just looked at each other and no words were exchanged. But I was not uncomfortable in my situation. Fast forward around 10 years later, and my grandma's a bit unwell, let's say. So I'm speaking with my mother, and I ask, why was Grandma's husband in a wheelchair and how did he die? At this point, my mother says he was never in a wheelchair, and asks why I thought this. Obviously, I explained this event, and she had no words. He wasn't in a wheelchair, so it couldn't have been him, and no one has ever been in my grandma's bungalow in a wheelchair as long as she lived there. She asked my grandma to clarify. Given this, I, now 20 years on from this event, have no real backing or understanding of what that was. And from time to time, I think about it with curiosity, as I'm not sure if I believe in these sorts of things, but what else could that have been? I did end up going to see a medium when I was around 16 with a partner at the time, and went in with the this is all bull mindset. This also did backfire, as I was singled out in a room of around 45 people, and the woman told me a man was following me, and he died in a car crash in the army. I said, must be the wrong person, as I don't know anyone like that, etc. To which she said, he's really close to you. I don't think I'm wrong. I later told my mother's parents about this medium experience, probably a week after, and they were shocked, as my granda's best friend died in a car crash in the army. Obviously, I have never heard about this, so I was none the wiser at the time. Wasn't sure if these correlated in any way, or if it's coincidence, but it always baffles me when I consider it all. Concluding this extra long story, I was curious if anyone else had similar experiences. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 351. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do poke the like button. And if you'd like early access to the videos, then you can support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You can do that for as little as $1 or more if you'd like a month. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer Teespring merchandise store if you'd like to grab a t-shirt or a hoodie or something like that. And if you want to support on a more one-off basis, then you can make donations during streams or videos like this one by hitting that little heart sign with the dollar in the middle. You don't have to do this, but I do appreciate it, and it helps keep my toes warm. Alright, I don't think there's any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: do you start buying Christmas foods and snacks and things, the sort of things they release seasonally, before December? Because I've got a rule, it's a pointless and stupid rule, I admit, but it's a rule that I don't buy that sort of thing before December. Like, I like mince pies. They only really come out at Christmas time, at least that's the only time I notice them. And they're in the stores now, and they have been for about a month or so, but I will not start buying them until next month. December 1st, then I'll start buying them. That'll be very yummy. But let me know what you think in a comment below. I look forward to reading your answers. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.